welcome back to Universe X. And today we are going to do part 2 of the last video I did, basically going over the archetypes of Saiyan Showdown to kind of ascertain the general value of the set as cards, not like monetary, but literally just as additions to the game. This is going to be part 2 of this video, and then we're going to be going into a couple videos about design and overall direction that I've seen this game take in the past couple of sets. And this is not, just to preface this is not a haterade video. This is more of me being a person who loves the game and wants to see it prosper, but also hears a lot of the community and wants to make sure that at least word is getting around, general buzz is getting around about what the game needs, because sometimes there are some moves that are being made that just people aren't really into. So with that being said, let me be very short and brief on the normal plugs. If you haven't already, you should visit the official Facebook group for this game and the community discussion group. They're both excellent groups. One's just more official announcements and spoilers, whereas the other one is just like a general forum of conversation. I also have the Universe X Discord. You can find anything from the card game to multiple video games to model building. We have channels for a lot of stuff. We even got a league channel. That's odd, but it is there. So yeah, I would suggest hopping in there, meeting some people. We got a bunch of cool people in there. And lastly, if you haven't looked already, I would highly suggest going over to TCGMetalZ. They make metal custom leader cards. If you guys weren't around at the beginning of my channel, you guys should already know my custom Xeno Harambe card that I got. Rock this every time I play Dark Broly. And I also have currently the manga U7 Gohan card, which is basically my favorite right now, but he makes good art every time he decides to make a card, and he's always trying to make more. So I would jump on that, check it out, and use the code UNIX, that's UNIX, at checkout. That's 10% off, baby. That's 10% off. Courtesy of yours truly and the man who makes the cards. So, moving on from there. We're gonna jump right into it because we have 5 leaders instead of 4 leaders like last time. We're gonna jump right into this. If you guys don't know how this format is going, I'll give a brief recap, but you can also go in the description and look at part 1. We go over, the leader strength, the archetype strength, whether or not there's a meta potential for the deck, and then room to grow. So yeah, we'll start off with Son Goku. You'll notice that with these leaders, there's already a lot of text that is just specifically pertaining to this leader and this archetype. When this card is placed in your area, activate up to 1 King Kai's planet from your deck. When this card attacks, draw 1 card. When your life is at 4 or less, or your opponent is awakened or their back is face up, you can switch up to 1 of your energy active mode, have this card gain 5,000 power for the turn, and flip it over. Because that 5,000 power isn't just an attack boost, not an effect, it's going to carry over to the other side, so you're going to flip over to a 20k leader for the turn. The backside, Destined Confrontation. When this leader attacks, draw 1 card. Activate main, you can send 4 King Kai's training under a King Kai's planet to your battle area to their owner's warp. This card gains plus 45,000 power, and then minus 15k for the next turn. It's like using Kaioken. He literally used Kaioken times 4, and in this case you were multiplying his power times 4. But you were going to go down to a 0 attack the next turn because flavor and theme. Love the flavor, but we're going to talk about it competitively. The activate battle once per turn, place 1 King Kai's training from under a King Kai's planet to your battle area to its owner's drop area. This card gains plus 10,000 power for the battle and minus 10,000 power for the next turn. Kaioken indeed. Now, when it comes to the leader strength, no. This leader doesn't do anything on its own. It swings, it draws 1 card, and its effect is completely tied to its archetype. Not even just a color, not even a type of play, but an archetype. It's all around this field card in the King Kai's training. It is cool that you can awaken at 4 life or when your opponent is awakened, because that means that you will be able to awaken at any life. If your opponent flips up on turn 2 and you are at 7 life, you will awaken with 7 life. So that's actually really cool. Probably means you should be using the Sparking Negates. However, leader wise, you're essentially just drawing on swinging, and that's it, outside of actually having the mechanics work. Now, when we go over to archetype strength, I'm gonna just give that a fat L. The archetype is very flavorful. As a fan of Dragon Ball, I cannot even stress how cool it is to see these two leaders and see them bounce off each other. When one of them flips, the other one flips. I'm referring to Vegeta. And it's also cool to see King Kai's training. It's cool to see how the numbers literally reflect the multipliers of Kaioken. I think that is wonderful from a fan perspective. From a card perspective, while this is cute, the core is thick. It requires you to run a field card that does not have barrier or indestructible or anything. I mean, we all knew King Kai's planet wasn't indestructible, the IEC, the Cell Saga, but this whole archetype can be negated by a tactical Vegeta. Like, if you blow up the field card, this deck cannot function. I don't know what else to say about that. Like, it literally ceases to function. This leader becomes a vanilla card. There are at least 9, 10, 12 cards that don't do anything in your deck anymore because you don't have the field card. It is bad. I just, that card needs an errata to have barrier, and maybe we could see something with his deck, but that is too scary. There's multiple ways you can remove a field card permanent off the field, and when that happens, his leader becomes a non-factor. When it comes to, so the archetype is like not a factor on strength. When it comes to meta presence, for those reasons alone now, the meta is in a very, very good space right now in terms of good decks. Good card.decks are kind of edging out over archetypes. And this is a very archetype based deck, and it's very limited to the way you can build it. There's not a lot of deck space left over after you fill in all the cards to make it move smoothly. So unfortunately, I would have to say no, there's like no meta presence with this. Now the next spot we're going to kind of touch on is room to grow. It's really a 0 out of like 10 on the room to grow here, because like I said, the core is very, very thick, and so you're not going to be able to add on to the deck very easily. Good green cards can be printed, but you have very limited space. Past that, the way this deck works, the only way you're going to improve the deck is by cards that directly deal with King Kai's training, or maybe even a better King Kai's planet. They just can't get wiped off the board. With that being said, Bandai has to go out of their way to make support for this deck, meaning that room to grow isn't that high, isn't that big. There's not that much. You can't really just get a good green card and go, oh, this is going to put this deck on the map, because the interactions are very, very specific. So that's kind of unfortunate. We're going to go over to the next leader now, the Vegeta. This one is weird because it's less archetype based and it's more spread out, but the cards don't. The level of weirdness in these cards, there are better green leaders in my opinion, but we're going to get into it. You got the auto once per turn. If your opponent's turn, when one of your battle cards is removed by a battle layer by an opponent's skill, your opponent chooses one card in their hand and discards it. Activate battle once per turn. If your life is less than or equal to your opponent's, this card gains 5,000 power for the battle, so he rises up to the occasion. Awaken when your life is at 3 or less, or your opponent's leader is facing up. You may draw 2 cards, choose up to one of your opponent's Unison cards, remove a marker from it, and flip this card over. The back end, when this card attacks, choose up to one of your opponent's Unison cards, remove a marker from it. Additionally, if your opponent does not have a Unison card in play, choose up to one green Great 8 card in your battle area, switch it to active mode, and negate its skills for the turn. Auto, once per turn. If it's your opponent's turn, when one of your battle cards is removed from the battle area by your opponent's skill, draw 1 card, then your opponent chooses 1 card in their hand and discards it. First thing you notice about this leader, he does not actually have an inherent draw. Yes, this is a leader who does not draw on his own. Why? I don't know, because it's not like his archetype has 18,000 draw cards in it. As a leader alone, this is very awkward. He requires you to play Great Apes to get the most out of some of his effects. He requires your cards to be removed from the battlefield by opponent's effects, and he doesn't draw. This is not it, Chief. This is not a good look. This leader does not do anything on his own. He's extremely dependent on the cards you put in there, but he has at least more general effects, and that can be good. That means that, you know, good green cards could come out to put this guy on the map. So we're gonna give the leader skill or leader strength pretty much just like a net. Like he's bad. He's not a good leader. But I mean, he has some interesting points, but some of them rely too much on your opponent doing things. Now we're gonna move over to archetype strength. His archetype is loose. It's not really like this guy has an archetype. He has, you know, some green, general green sand cards that do things, But really, this archetype is about putting a lot of things on the board that can maybe block, things that your opponent doesn't want to have to get through, things that your opponent might have to clear to swing at your life. And through that, your leader card is supposed to be able to start taking your opponent's cards out of their hand and doing interesting effects and, you know, just synergies like that. However, it's not really an archetype, it's kind of loose. So archetype strength is kind of hard to place. I'm not really going to give that a strong number because it's more of a loose brand than an archetype. Now when it comes to meta presence, no. Green is already in a weird space right now. It's like red, except slightly worse, in my opinion. Green is not positioned well in this format unless you're looking at yellow-green in the terms of Cell Surge, which is essentially just a yellow-green leader with a bunch of green cards. However, yeah, there's not a lot of good green meta right now, and on top of that, this is not the top of the pack for green leaders. Now, when you want to come over to Room to Grow, I think that's where this Vegeta leader has the most space to flex. As they make more effects that have pesky blockers that can restand, blockers like the SR and SPR, blockers that can restand with effects, blockers that make things harder, maybe floodgates in the form of blockers, you're going to start finding a lot more times where your opponent's like, that's got to go. You guys literally got to go. Goodbye. And then you'll get Vegeta's effect. So I think that's actually a really, really good point about this leader. He does have actually a lot of room to grow. And but the once per turn is kind of weird because, you know, drawing a card and negging your opponent one card once per turn, in the grand scheme of things, won't even really be that much unless you have cards that are just like, hey, like when I leave the field through effect, your opponent drops 2 cards and your leader's like, make that 3. Then you're going to start feeling it a little bit more. But yeah, it's kind of weird. So we're going to go over to yellow. And we're going to start with Sun Gohan. If you have 1 or more energy, when a player places a field extra card in the battle area, you may flip this card over. If you do, switch up to 1 of your yellow energy to active mode, and you can't flip your leader card to its front for the turn, and you choose 1, draw a card, or add up to 1 yellow extra card energy cost of 1 from your drop area to your hand. Cool, cool, cool. And then we're going to flip it over because it's not an awakening, it's a flip like launch. Auto, when this card attacks, choose up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards, switch it to rest mode. This card gains plus 5,000 power for the turn, making it a 20k. Auto, once per turn, when this card KOs an opponent's battle card, switch this card to active mode. Cool. When a player's field card leaves the battle area, you may flip this card to its front. If you do, you can't flip your leader card to the back for the turn. If it's your opponent's turn, switch up to 1 of your yellow energy to active mode. Mono, one of your yellow energy, not mono. And then switch this card gains 5,000 power for the turn, making your Kid Gohan a 20k as well. So, this is going to be where, like, Saiyan Showdown shines the most. In terms of leader strength, this leader is very, very strong. You are going to be able to flip. I mean, like, this is just really good. On his front side, he's going to be able to draw a card, or you're going to be able to add 1 like field card from your drop area to your hand. So you either draw a card, or you get to continue your cycle. On the back side, you're going to be able to switch a card to active mode and then gain 5,000 power. Either way, this leader is almost always 20k. He's almost always popping off, and it's just a really, 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 really good feel. He's going to be swinging on things for higher than normal leader pressure. He's going to be flipping and drawing and untapping. It's going to actually be a pretty good time. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, having a 20k leader means that he's going to be able to dodge a lot of attacks that would have been neutral, but having him be able to flip back and untap an energy gives you a little bit of extra like wiggle room in yellow that you wouldn't normally have. So this guy is actually a really, really, really good leader. I'm actually putting him at the top of Saiyan Showdown's leader strength. Now, when it comes to archetype strength, this guy, outside of his field cards, really isn't an archetype. His field cards work in conjunction with him, but outside of his field cards, you just have a lot of good yellow cards, and that's what kind of hurts this leader from being played. At the very moment, there are other yellow leaders that can do a lot of work. Now, granted, something you need to understand about this guy is that since he doesn't need to awaken, he doesn't need to go down on life. So if he just starts flipping and you keep defending yourself, this guy can stay at 6 life for most of a game, which is something that Icarus Gohan, which arguably draws more cards, can't say that it can do. So that's actually very important depending on how your match procedures are and a lot of things actually. But as far as archetype strength goes, I'm gonna give it not very strong because it's very much so yellow in the sense that this is a good yellow card deck in conjunction with the leader already being solid. In terms of meta potential, out of Saiyan Showdown, this is the leader I would expect to see the most of at a tournament setting. I think he's head and shoulders above the other leaders, and it's not even close. So yeah, in terms of meta potential, I can see this guy getting popular, especially because once again, he's one of those rare leaders that doesn't have to worry about his life total. He's just up there and he's doing his thing from the rip. So yeah, I would put that up as high. In terms of room to grow, since this guy is so general and the only thing you really have to do is run the field cards to make him good or to make him viable, I think that's actually very, very important. I think that Kid Gohan, who flips into Ape, will be as good as yellow is as a color, and yellow has been good for a bit. So yeah, this is by far this is the first positive review on every single asset that I'm trying to put on as criteria for the leaders here. Next, you got Turles. If a Turles Crusher Core in your battle area will be placed in its owner's drop area by one of your skills, send it to its owner's warp instead. Same as the old one. Autumn, when this card is placed in your lead area, you play the Unison Tree of Might, and then when this card attacks, draw one card. Cool. And when you're at 4 or less, or have 3 more life face up, you can flip or draw 2 and flip this card over. And on the back, still has the same permanent. When this card attacks, draw one card. Then Spirit Boost 1 yellow. You can either, if you have 2 more cards face up in your life, this card gains 10,000 power, or you can activate a Fruit of the Tree of Might, which is the old green card. In terms of leader strength, it's not really doing anything too special. You start off with your Unison. That's cool. If I'm not mistaken, the Unison can attack. General, nice awakening. I think it is pretty cool that it awakens the way it does. And it has the normal permanent. So really, it's kind of weird. This leader also doesn't draw on its, oh no, wait, I'm so sorry. It was just in a different order. So yeah, this leader is, he's just kind of mid in terms of leader strength. I like how his back side allows you to pay a yellow energy to play Fruit of the Tree of Might. That's actually really neat. I also like how it has the Spirit Boost, so you can start kind of triggering some of those effects with Spirit Boost. But as a leader, it's kind of middle of the road. It's not broken, it's not bad, it's middle of the road. As far as an archetype goes, I can't hold you. It feels very reminiscent of the old Turles cards, and these weren't necessarily great. The better cards that this deck can use are either generic yellow cards, like its boss card, Turles All Too Easy, or some of the cards that come out with the Gohan cards, you know, the Gohan Ape, the Goku assistance card. So archetype strength is kind of middle of the road too. It's not really anything to be like, oh about. It's just kind of like, okay, cool. In terms of meta potential, once again, yellow is in a very strong place, but the thing is, yellow is mostly served by playing the best yellow cards. So an archetype yellow deck, especially an archetype that has to be as thick as this one can be a little rough, because you need to be able to combo from your life and stuff like that, and there's issues with this. So meta potential right now, it's probably a no for me, dog. But when it comes to room for growth, they did a very, very, very obvious play on trying to make sure that you can run green Turles cards in conjunction with this deck. And we've even seen some multicolored green-yellow Turles cards that kind of bridge the gap. So as you can see, it's very easy for them to print support for Turles. Anytime they get a yellow-green Turles, we know it's support for this deck. Turles has been printed in 2 colors so far and has been yellow and green. So potentially anytime they print support for either one, it could help either one, potentially. So I think it's easy for this to grow, and I think they're gonna wanna kind of keep Turles in these 2 colors for the time being. So potential for growth, it's kind of narrow. They have to go out of their way to do it, but you know, because this deck is a yellow Saiyan, there's a lot of cards that can come out that help yellow Saiyan. So I'm gonna say potential for growth is actually pretty freaking high. Moving on to the last one, we got Finn. When this card attacks, draw 1 card. When a card is placed under this card, draw 1 card, add cards up to your life, or into your life until you have 6 life left. Flip this card over. Cool. Once per turn, if all your energy is black, choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards, place them in this card, and when you're at 4 or less, you can draw 2 cards and flip this over, so your opponent can't starve you off Awakening forever. However, your opponent plays 1 card against Fu, and you'll be able just to eat it and awaken. So it's best that you don't play cards against Fu, and that's crazy that this leader just kind of tries to bully you into not playing a 1-drop. Now it's back. Permanent gets 5,000 power for each card placed under it. Auto, at the end of your turn, play all the battle cards under this card in your opponent's battle area with their skills negated for the game, then place all cards on this card into their owner's drop areas. Yeah, so that means if you have like extra cards or unisons, they just have to go. But activate main. Once per turn, if all your energy is black, draw 1 card, then choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards, place it under this card. Choose up to 1 keyword skill on this card, or under this card, and this card gains that skill for the turn. Okay. Leader strength. This leader is busted. The ability to, I mean, the draw 1 is just standard, but the ability to just be a hard removal, well, kind of a soft removal, is kind of wild, but you give it back without an effect. And that's the craziest part about it. Like, you just, turn 1, you're just like, oh, that 1-drop that you need to set up, give me it. Unless that's barrier, give me it. And then next turn, and that turn forward, you can just keep taking a card each time. I think that's actually really, really, really strong. Now, the weird part about it, this card doesn't draw and swing after that. After its awakening turn, you're gonna need to draw by like absorbing a battle card, which means that if your opponent is a leader based card, or just plays unisons, or their cards just kind of come on and off the board, then you're kind of out of luck for card acquisition off of your leader. So that's pretty interesting. As far as archetype strength, the archetype is very, very, very limited. There's some very strong cards in the archetype, but there's not a lot of cards there, you know. So I'm gonna say the archetype strength is it's hard to place. It's kind of weak, but the cards that you have are strong. You're sucking up unisons, you're nuking the field, pseudo nuking the field. There's a lot of good stuff here. It's just that it's kind of sparse. When it comes to meta potential, this one's a little hard to place. I think the best black decks are manifesting, and Finn is not one of them. However, Finn has a lot of good pieces. It's only a matter of time until we either get support for Finn, or we get the right chariot to support Finn leader and his cards, and all of a sudden this deck is a present. Room to grow, infinite. We've got 5 Finn cards, and they're all really good. Just not enough to really make up a deck. Like I said, it's a matter of time until we see some support, or we see more cards that just fit in better with Finn's skills. Cards that, you know, prey off of skillless cards, like cards that maybe destroy skillless cards or anything like that. And this card should see more play. So that is the conclusion of my overview for Saiyan Showdown. I hope you guys liked it. I just wanted to go over all the cards real quick, the leaders at least, and the archetypes, so that next video I can talk a little bit more about the direction of the set, how it feels as a consumer and a player as well, and kind of just get a discussion going, because that's going to lead into a couple of videos on its own. So I hope you guys liked the content. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I have a new end screen that's going to kind of outline some of the other things I'm getting into, some of the other places you can visit and support me if you like. And I will see you guys the next time you decide to join Universe X. Later.